Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, depending on what your sleep schedule looks like these days. I'm sure you're sick of hearing it by now, but 2020 has been a really hard year for everyone, marketers included. So Bloom and OnCrawl decided to come together, team up to present a few new SEO goodies that you may have missed this year. So my name is Jay, and before I dive too deep into my intro, I'd like to introduce my co-pilot for today's flight, Jérôme.
Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar, and thank you, Jay, for this introduction. So yeah, my name is Jérôme, and I'm a technical SEO at OnCrawl. So OnCrawl is an award-winning technical SEO platform that helps you make smarter SEO decisions. And it combines your content, log files, search data, and it will help you build a SEO strategy with confidence. So basically, it's an SEO crawler, a log analyzer, and it has some third-party integrations like Google Search Console, Majestic. And all this data, we use it to build and produce actionable dashboards and reports to support your SEO. So it helps you improve rankings, traffic, and online revenues. And
Thanks. And
on your side,
yeah.
you could introduce yourself, Jay.
I'm the SEO product lead at Bloom Search Marketing. Bloom is a digital marketing agency based in Montreal, though in remote culture, work from home culture, geographical restrictions aren't necessarily as interesting as they used to be. But regardless, we handle PPC campaigns and strategy, SEO, paid media, CRO, organic social, really the works. I've worked personally with a fairly diverse set of clients over the past 4 years or so. I've been at Bloom. That includes e-commerce businesses, lead gen, B2C, B2B, software as a service, service as a service. We're still learning ourselves. SEO is definitely a tricky beast. It's a lot like trying to stand on a moving platform, but Jérôme and I, we're really excited for the opportunity to lend our voice and experience to the conversation.
Yes, and just a quick word about my job as well. So I'm part of the customer success team at OnCrawl, and basically my job is to onboard, train our new clients, and to help all our customers to answer SEO problematics. So I like working on problematics such as internal linking strategy, migrations, crawl budget optimizations, duplicate content. So any technical SEO problematics that we can answer using our tool.
Great. So first thing we want to do here is really talk about the flight plan for the webinar, so you have an idea of what to expect. Firstly, we'll want to set the stage to paint a picture of what SEOs and marketers are going through right now in the search space. We also have some COVID-related Google updates, including some changes to Google My Business, as well as the degree to which they're willing to support COVID-related structured data. There are also some non-COVID related Google updates from Google My Business and Google Search Console, a couple algorithm updates that we want to touch on, as well as a new way to measure user experience with some prioritization tips from Jérôme. And as we go through, if you have any questions, please jump into the chat, leave your questions there, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So the COVID-19 pandemic changed users' search behaviors. I doubt anyone is really surprised to read the statement. The challenge is really understanding how user search behaviors have changed and what implications these changes have on our marketing efforts. So Google noticed a surge in search volume for some new terms. Well, not new, but previously more scarce, let's say, but a surge in them nonetheless. So can you freeze a certain type of food, how to bake bread, short-term employment opportunities, DIY projects, at-home workouts. Maybe some of these search terms resonate with members of the audience, but something else happened that's interesting as well, and you may have found yourself in this situation. You may have performed a search to see if you could go and procure services from a store in your neighborhood, whether it's a corner store or a tailor or a restaurant, and found yourself unsure of whether the information you're being provided in the local listings result, like the open hours or just general open status of the business, whether or not that information reflected the changes that were imposed on them by all the craziness that was COVID-19. So this general, the state of being unsure is sort of the skepticism that's being brought to the search process. And I want to circle back on that phenomenon in a little bit when we talk more about the Google My Business updates. But before we get there, I just want to take a quick breather here and ask you, our audience, to respond to the following poll related to how your traffic may have changed. No, sorry, not the traffic, the workload that you experienced in trying to mitigate the impacts of the pandemic in your marketing roles. So during the pandemic, did you experience a lighter workload and a traffic drop, a lighter workload but no traffic drop, a greater workload and a traffic drop, or a greater workload but no traffic drop?
So Jay, on your side, what would you answer?
Yeah, so
from your experience.
From my experience, it really depends, and I guess I'll dive into my experience right after I talk about the results that we found from a survey that was conducted by Marie Haynes, which is a pretty prominent figure in the SEO space. She conducted a study, or just a few survey questions over Twitter with a couple thousand responses that reported generally that most SEOs reported traffic drops simultaneously with a greater workload. Oops, let's go back here. So let's look at the poll results really quick.
Yes.
Looking at the chat. I'm wondering if our audience
has
experienced
in a
similar
minute.
results.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can go back after your poll results.
So you asked me what I personally experienced. I think I would have to say, if I aggregated everything and sort of cut through the case by case fluctuations, on average I experienced traffic drops with reduced workload. But ultimately, I think, as with most good SEO questions and answers, we're in a it depends sort of situation. So I mean, this may resonate with you as well, but we saw SEO investments go through this sort of cycle of, at first, businesses who are thinking of investing in SEO, there's a lot of uncertainty and risk aversion during the early days of the pandemic. How would it pan out? And then as we started to get a better feel for the landscape, things calmed down and there was a renewed confidence, and ultimately into the later the later stage of the pandemic, into the state that we're in currently. It seems like there's an increased investment. People are more and more interested in long-term investments to smooth short-term uncertainty. So here are some poll results. Looks like 38% experienced a greater workload but no traffic drop. That's great to hear. Good for you guys. You staying busy. And 32% coming up right behind them experienced a greater workload and a traffic drop. So yeah, so the greater workload, I definitely experienced that as well, but it was delayed a little bit, I would say. As I said, at first there was this uncertainty and risk aversion that caused people to really take the foot off the gas a little bit on investment and just see how things pan out. But like I said, it's a depends situation. So drops I experienced drops much more commonly in my restaurant, professional service, and immigration clients. Whereas I experienced some gains or at least constant performance in some of my e-commerce businesses, B2B clients as well, with long customer journey. So I know you had some experiences as well, Jérôme, that you wanted to touch on.
We didn't run a study, but what we experience at OnCrawl is that the online retailers are the big winners of this COVID situation, I would say. And here is an example of a big online retailer in France that, as you can see, experienced a peak, an increase of traffic. So reality expected prediction. So it's based on logs data that we analyzed. And yeah, so this is something that I think is common to all, almost all online retailers. This increase right after the first lockdown. So yeah.
Yep,
and on my personal experience, I was working on a migration just before the lockdown, and I was happy to see that the traffic increased as well. So no COVID impact on my experience side.
Yeah, you're lucky, and it's certainly case by case. I'm sure there's as many horror stories as success stories if you really dig in. But I promised earlier to circle back on this notion of skepticism on the part of searchers when they come to the search engine to perform a search and they're looking for information on local businesses. Whether or not the information that's being presented to them is representative of the recent changes that have taken place. So Google really needed to come to the table with a solution to this problem to instill confidence. So the first stop on our journey is the Google My Business. So first and foremost, like we were saying, we saw local businesses get hit hardest by the pandemic. The problem is that these local businesses weren't communicating effectively in some sense whether or not their information is up to date. Are they open? Are their services intact? Are they a safe place to go and visit and conduct business? So the solution that Google came up with for Google My Business is really threefold, and we'll start with Google My Business attributes, which you may be familiar with, but attributes are a quick, concise, and digestible form of information to really educate the searchers and users about what different features your business is able to provide. And adding attributes to your listing will help confirm your business's ability to satisfy a specific user desire and qualify your listing to rank for search terms with specified desired features. So attributes can be added in the same Google My Business menu as you would use to add descriptions, hours, services, if you're familiar with the layout of the platform. Anything to add there, Jérôme?
Yeah, the better, well, the more you use these attributes, the better it is. So, and the more precise you will be, and like on long tail keywords, it might also be a key factor on ranking on Google Maps or even in the SERPs. So yeah, it shows that your business is up to date, if the profile is up to date.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And some pertinent attributes may even be selected to appear more prominently in your listing results. So for example, we have on Le Frier here. You can see that dine-in, takeout, delivery, some very, very critical sort of pieces of information are placed prominently there on the result to really communicate effectively to searchers. And this could have important implications for the click-through rates and eventually the purchase decision rates or conversion rates of those interactions. So these could be really important decision criteria. And the searchers are only a few clicks away from comparing you to your competitors, and whether or not they have that information available in their listing results is going to play a huge role.
Plus on local SEO, it was really a quick win to be up to date, use all these new attributes. I don't know if you noticed the same in Canada, but in France here, with the fear of COVID, customers changed their habits and they left the big supermarkets and large retailers for small local shops. So yeah, with the lockdown, you were more inclined to shop near your house than go to these places where you could meet a lot of people. So yeah, having this information up to date was really a quick win for these shops.
And Jérôme, if I can ask you a follow-up question to that, did that change over time as the pandemic went on? Was that an
Yeah,
early sort of phenomenon?
it was yeah, just an early phenomenon. After lockdown, what we noticed that they came back to their habits,
Hmm.
as it is maybe easy in the daily life to shop in the big supermarkets, or you go back to your habits, and plus you want to go back to your normal life. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. So the second of my promised threefold approach that Google took is the ability to add special hours for sub-services that your business provides. So consider the case where you potentially have um, your business offers takeout versus delivery, and those two services have different hours. You could have hours dedicated for seniors versus the rest of the population. You could have online service hours versus on location service hours, or pickup versus in store. Essentially, the idea here is to have more precise hours for your sub-services. This will ultimately lead to less miscommunication, less misaligned expectations, less headaches, and ultimately happier customers. And third up is Google's addition of COVID-19 posts. So in lieu of offer, the more traditional offer and what's new posts that you may be familiar with, your listing could feature COVID-specific updates. And having COVID posts on your listing can, in the same way that attributes in some ways, it offers added visibility of and confidence in the fact that your business continues to be available and they continue to operate. And it can also be a means of communicating less standard, less quantifiable COVID-related info like new initiatives, business model pivots, discounts, or incentive programs. And as a side effect, Google has this is interesting and may be useful to some people, but as a side effect, Google has also removed the 10 location limit for bulk posting through Google My Business API. So if you have more than 10 locations and you've been experiencing headaches related to queuing up bulk posts in the past, it's time to rejoice.
Only for COVID posts, of course. The
Only for
rest,
COVID,
yeah.
yeah. So I'll hand this one off to you, Jerome.
Yes. So GMB, well, the on-site version of GMB could be structured data COVID, as it answers the same need, but on your website. So just to explain what structured data is, it's some code that qualifies the type of data you have on your page. Also, so you could say, okay, this is a product page, or this is a listing page, or it could qualify that this data is opening hours. So basically, it's just some simple code that you add on your page that will help Google understand your content. And so Google added some COVID-19 related structured data that is called new announcement. And it's directly related to this COVID post, since it has the same, almost the same goal, helping governments and associations to publish urgent announcement about COVID updates, like quarantine guidelines, travel restrictions, anything related to this situation. And but still, there is one that is that you can use on your website. It's the reviews, hours, and shopping restrictions that can apply to any kind of business. So using that, implementing that structured data could be also a quick, an SEO quick win. And
Yeah,
I think you can use your Search Console to, if you don't have access to the code, right?
yeah, that's correct. And ultimately, I just wanted to add, this is ultimately a way to allow users to have confidence in your business without needing to necessarily see your local listing. It provides that same value proposition of giving that extra degree of confidence to users that you are in fact operating, that your services are available. And yeah, you can, well, for whatever reason, if you don't have access to the HTML of your page that you'd like to implement a special announcement structured data on, Google Search Console also has a tool available that you can submit those announcements in a more sort of user-friendly type way.
Yeah.
So this is what the code looks like for anyone who's interested.
Yes, yeah. So it's some markups that here it's a screenshot from OnCrawl, because our crawler can detect all these markups and make some reports. So I found an example from UK's government website. They have a page dedicated to coronavirus, and yeah, so you will be able to check if it's well implemented, and what kind of markups you have on your page, and how it's implemented across your website. If you could switch to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. So yeah, we'll have these reports that will show you what kind of structured data you have on your different pages, and a breakdown by page type or page groups, and to see if it's implemented or not. And then you would be able to measure the impact on your ranking and your SEO strategy. So by crossing the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, crossing the data, you can start to look at which pages have what type of structured data implemented, and then cross-reference that that segmentation with traffic metrics, with crawlbot hits, just to start getting the gears turning of what kind of impact the implementation of that has on your site's performance in SEO.
Yeah, or ranking positions or any metrics like this.
There you go. So, though it may be difficult to see at times, COVID-19 is just one chapter of 2020. Marketing in its many forms continues to evolve. Trends and tools and techniques that we use, they all march onwards. So we want to take a look at some SEO changes and updates that took place that don't necessarily relate to COVID-19. So we're back. We're back at Google My Business, familiar territory, I know, but this one is juicy. So Google has announced that they'll be rolling out a premium Google My Business listing offer. The offer here is $50 per month per location to have a Google Guaranteed badge appear on your listing. Google Guarantee is nothing new. Actually, it started out in the Google ad space, and it was a guarantee to customers that make a purchase through a Google ad click, that their service, that the provider of that service would provide the promised services, and it was done through a third-party audit of the business and a certification process. But GMB Premium promises to be a similar value proposition where customers have their purchases guaranteed, businesses have greater perceived legitimacy, and ultimately potentially higher engagement, especially if you're scanning through a list of results and some of them have that badge and some of them don't. So we thought it might be interesting to run another poll here for you folks on this topic, is whether or not you'd be interested in this premium Google My Business offer that Google is putting on the table. So our organizers are firing on all cylinders, trying to get the poll going.
Yes. Oh, it was the previous poll. Okay.
Any thoughts, Jerome? Is this interest you at all? Does this resonate with you?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious about the click rate, the impact on the click rate, of course.
Yeah, that's ultimately going to be.
The question is yes, but only if the competitors have one. That's the key factor of choosing it or not. I think competitors.
Yeah,
maybe you will have no choice.
I would have to say the same thing, and like you said, like the primary decision criteria is going to be what impact does it have on your CTRs and conversion rates. And I think it would have a much more interesting impact on your CTR if you happen to be the only listing result in the set of visible listing results that has the badge, versus if you're in a set of 5 or 10 competitors that all have the badge, it might not be nearly as interesting. The inverse of that as well is, you know, if all of your competitors have the badge but you don't, obviously that's going to have the same sort of CTR impact, but in the opposite and undesirable direction. So that resonates with me as well. Technical difficulties, maybe we'll move on, and if the poll comes up, let's circle back around.
Okay.
So Google Search Console is the next stop on our tour here. Every SEO's home base, they know it, they love it. It got some exciting changes and new additions in 2020, and we'll start with the crawl stats report. This one's fairly fresh. So if you've ever wished for greater transparency into Google's crawl behavior, wish granted. If you navigate to your GSC property settings, you should see the report available. And the crawl stats report will offer you insights into the frequency, the volume, the nature of Google's interactions with your site. For instance, you can segment bot hits by the status code that bot confronts, the resource type, whether the crawl is discovery versus refresh. So discovery would be crawling new content on your site, crawling a piece of, crawling a page for the first time ever, versus refresh, where Google is crawling something they've already seen in the past and just refreshing their knowledge of that content. And also you can look at the type of Google bot, whether it's the mobile or the desktop or the image bot. So really the takeaway here is, if you're fortunate enough to have the bandwidth to be proactive about your SEO, some of the earliest signs of a site's deviation from SEO technical best practices will manifest in this report first. You might notice an increase in some error status codes or server connectivity issues, as you see in the screenshot on the slide. And these will always appear in this stats report before they manifest in performance impacts for your business. So if you're really keeping a close eye, you might be able to notice these tech issues taking place and start to troubleshoot them before they really have a significant impact on your bottom line.
Yeah. And at OnCrawl, we talk a lot about log analysis, and well, sometimes unfortunately you don't have access to your logs for technical issues, and this report is the first information that you can get from the logs. So it's really interesting to give this access. It's quite easy to get access to this. You just need a Search Console account. So yeah, very good feature.
Yep, I love it. And here's another one you may or may not be familiar with. The link disavow tool got a user interface refresh. And if you're not familiar with the tool, really it's there to let you renounce any affiliation that your business has with a spammy link source. And this could prevent possible penalties or perceived illegitimacy. And Google's investment in a new UI for this tool suggests that they are going to continue to support this tool for the foreseeable future. I've seen in a few statements by Google, they recommend not using this tool typically, just because there is some risk involved with it. It could tank your rankings if you use it incorrectly, if you happen to disavow some of the backlinks pointing to your site that carry a significant proportion of the overall authority that's being awarded to you. And Google's algorithm, they keep saying this, it's getting smarter and smarter and less dependent on link signals, and spammy links are already discounted as far as they say. So you have a little bit of contradictory messaging, at least as far as I can tell. Something to think about anyway. On the one hand, you have a new UI, which suggests that the tool continues to be valuable and interesting and will continue to be supported into the near future, but also Google, at least what they tell us, is they're distancing themselves from dependency on this tool. So take that for what it's worth.
I think we have the poll results from our previous question.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I didn't see it on my screen, but I'm happy to see it went out. So would you pay $50 a month to get a Google guaranteed certification? Yes, 15%. Yes, but only if all my competitors have won 40%, and the winner squeaking out yes, but only if my competitors have one, is no with 45%. So that's interesting to see. I wonder if
Yes.
Google ran some market research to see what the overall sort of sentiment was towards this type of solution as well. I think it was a couple of years ago that they ran that test, early 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And they came away with like, okay, there's enough interest to warrant putting this project out. So maybe it looked something similar to this.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back to my slides here. Okay, so Google algorithm updates. This is every SEO's the bane of our existence. And if your SEO senses were tingling, it was for good reason. Google does a few core algorithm updates every year, which tend to rock the boat a little bit. And if you recall, one of the more significant ones in recent memory is 2018's Medic update. And it caused a lot of headache for myself personally. It targeted your money and your life sites, sites with sensitive and high stakes content. And this update favored big businesses with huge domain authorities, and it pretty much devastated smaller businesses with less established footholds. And really, if you distill this update into something actionable for marketers, it really was this concept of EAT in the SEO space, something you may or may not have heard of: expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. And it's this way of quantifying the degree to which you are qualified to rank for content that is of a sensitive nature. If you break it down into this expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, some of the actions that you can take on your site to improve these signals as perceived by Google are securing, everyone's going to hate this recommendation, but securing backlinks from authoritative sources, have fresh and updated content, be relatively consistent with industry consensus on whatever topic it is that you're talking about, get more positive reviews in GMB and beyond, and attribute the content that you're writing to authors that have readily available bio, and their credentials are also explicitly stated. Did you want to throw something in here, Jérôme?
No, that you said it all.
Okay, great. So, in the craziness of 2020, we were granted exactly zero mercy from Google. In May 2020, we saw an algorithm update.
Christmas.
Yeah, just before Christmas. Happy holidays, right?
Yeah.
In May 2020, though, we saw an algorithm update that looked like a slight correction for the pendulum swinging a bit too far in the direction of this concept that I mentioned before, in favoring big businesses and sites in the space of your money and your life type content. And this was taken away from a couple studies that I looked into from Search Metrics. Marie Haynes did an analysis as well, and this was some of the overlap that we saw. The update gave smaller sites with solid content and decent authority signals, not great, but decent, solid EAT foundation to outrank their bigger counterparts. Whereas December 2020, yes, you're reading that right, there was just an update last week. The unfortunate reality of SEO is that Google never really tells us exactly what they change when they perform an update. So it's up to the SEO community to really gather data and insights on the impacts, who was impacted in a positive direction versus negative direction, and put all this insight together and come up with a conclusion as to what was targeted, how do we react, how do we fix whatever broke. And so far, it's early. We still need some more time to do all that analysis, but so far, based on SEMrush's compiled data, and they have a lot of data to compile, so it's a pretty good source to go. It looks like the major winners and losers are as listed, as you can see here on the slide. But as an actionable for you folks, if you haven't already, we recommend taking some time, lend a close eye to your Google Search Console performance report to see if you were impacted by the update, both clicks, impressions, average ranking position.
It's a bit early to take conclusions. Some studies are just coming out, so just wait a few days, maybe a weeks, and you'll see that we'll have better data to analyze this latest core update.
And we're not out of the woods quite yet. We have one more interesting change to discuss, and we're often forced to make educated guesses in the SEO space and verify them via experimentation. So what often helps with this process is looking at Google's motivations. You can break it down relatively simply. Google's search division wants revenue. Advertisers provide revenue. Advertisers want users. Users want a good experience. So ultimately, Google, their utmost priority is making sure that they're offering users a good experience. And this is what that breakdown has looked like for the last little while. So what makes for a good user experience? Google has broken down that sort of difficult to quantify ethereal almost like concept into these somewhat quantifiable metrics here. So us SEOs, we've been touting the importance of mobile friendliness and HTTPS and page speed for years. But most recently, as you can see highlighted in green here, page speed has been broken down into a few more precise constituents, and these core web vitals, as they're called, are set to roll out in May 2021 as confirmed ranking factors. It's not too often that Google gives us explicit information as to what becomes and does not become a ranking factor. So when they do, we take it pretty seriously.
Yeah.
Core web vitals are 3 distinct measures of a page's loading behavior. And Jérôme, I'll pass it to you just for giving a conceptual sort of image of how to think about these.
Yeah, so LCP, large contentful paint, it's about the loading. So it's answering the question on how fast does it load your page. And FID, first input delay, so interactivity. So how fast it is interactive. So how fast can you interact with the page? And CLS, the cumulative layout shift, if I pronounce it correctly. So it's the stability. So how fast is it stable, your screen, so the page. And all these 3 core web vitals, yeah, they're part of this page speed. So there's a few Google tools because they're also giving us the tools to use it, to measure it, and to make these audits. So that's great as well. So Google is telling us what to do and how to measure it. So.
And let me throw a curveball your way, Jérôme. Do you have a favorite? Is there one that resonates with you most?
About tools? No?
Yeah, when you're loading a page, which one do you feel has the most impact for you? Your perception of what means the page is done loading versus not done loading.
But I would use page speed insight, which is the most useful one, and plus it has an API.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the cumulative layout shift.
Yeah.
If you've ever gone to click a button on a site and just like half a millisecond before you actually touch the screen, or click your mouse, the whole the whole site rather shifts downwards and you end up clicking an ad or something. That's one of the worst things possible for user experience. So I'm glad that they're starting to consider that. Yeah.
So to continue about the tools, Google Search Console is giving us some insight as well. So you will have this view split in mobile and desktop, and see what's good, what needs to be improved, and what should be corrected, what is bad.
Yeah, exactly. And you can pair this information with your GA, your Google Analytics, rather, your audience data, and even the crawl stats report, as we mentioned earlier, to see which version of your site receives not only the most traffic from users, but also the most attention from Googlebot. So you can prioritize your optimization efforts between mobile and desktop.
Yeah.
And these reports, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that still there are some limits in because on Search Console it will be a sample of your pages, not the whole website. Yeah, and this is the next point I wanted to talk about, is the and what you should audit.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get there in just a second. I just want to add one thing before we change slides here. The reports, if you're not familiar with how they work or how to use them, these reports actually do open up to specific lists of which pages are suffering from which of the core Web Vital problems. So you can click in, you can dive in and see which pages have which problems, and Google has also published a wealth of documentation on how to address some of the core Web Vital pain points to just guide your optimization efforts, as it were.
Yeah.
So in terms of prioritization, yeah, go ahead.
And to jump on this documentation from Google, because the first step, I think, is to really understand these metrics, how they work, and how you should work on them to optimize them. But yeah, you will face an issue that is you cannot test your whole website. You cannot test every pages. Even using the API, you will have some limits, technical limits. So I wanted to share some tips or insights on how you should think about it. Focus on relevant samples, because even Google is not going to test all pages of your website. It has a cost. All this, it takes resources. So most likely, Google is going to test your homepage and the most visited or most crawled pages. So maybe you could yeah, create samples based on both criteria. And also you should focus on your key business pages, of course. And then once you tested all these samples, yeah, you could try to compare your audits based on page types, so listings, product pages, blog posts, etc. Or compare pages without or with image pages by depth. So means that some pages deepen your architecture, might be slower than the ones closer to the homepage, since due to cache server strategy or management. And also, yeah, you could base this comparison on other KPIs like the weight of the page, the number of inlinks. So should be interesting to compare. And yeah, to continue how we will do it at OnCrawl. As for now, we are able to help you select your samples based on the previous KPIs I told about. And using the PageSpeed Insight API and OnCrawl API, we have this Google Colab that will run the test for you based on your sample. And we can upload the audits in OnCrawl and cross-analyze the data. So yeah.
Perfect.
I'd be happy to answer a question about this topic after.
Yeah, I see we do have a couple questions, and but for the prepared portion of the webinar, that's all we have for you today. So we want to thank you so much for attending. We hope you brought we brought you some actionables, a few actionables, things to consider, at the very least, some food for thought. Our organizers are in the chat, sifting through on all cylinders here. So if you have any questions, please feel free, and we'll do our best to provide some clarity. We also just want to take a moment here to thank the businesses. So Bloom has, you know, like I said up front, Bloom is a search marketing agency. If you need any help planning your SEO, SEO is a sort of a difficult one to pin down sometimes in 2021. If you need help strategizing or executing, please don't hesitate. Let us know. We'd love to jump on and have a conversation with you.
Yes, and yeah, just before the Q&A, to answer this question, there is a campaign, a charity campaign I wanted to share about. So it's SEOs for Education. So OnCrawl wanted to, I know that we all been impacted by this year's events. And at OnCrawl, we wanted to give back for the holiday season. So actually, this campaign is a good way to get you full access of our tool, OnCrawl, at a price you can pay out of pockets. And all the money, 100% of it, the money collected will be donated for to Plan International for Children's Educations. So yeah, it's just the best way to give back and level up your SEO at the same time. So you'll find a link to the campaign in our chat sections.
Yeah, and if you go to the handout section of GoToWebinar, you can see there's an ebook from OnCrawl there on technical SEO, and
Yes.
you can also access the presentation that we've put together here for you today. So feel free. Okay, so we have a few questions here to go through.
Yes.
I think the first one that I see after our poll results is a question from, I am so sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, Loic. The question is Google My Business as relevant for big and small business? I suppose it has a greater positive impact on small than big businesses. So the way I'd approach this question is really in the I suppose the subconscious or the mind share of big businesses, or the subconscious of users and searchers, consumers really. Big businesses have more of a foothold, and so they're less searchers are less dependent on local search results to inform them of the existence of big businesses. They probably already know that there's like a Walmart down the street, or a, depends on where you are in the world. These references might make more sense to you or less, but Best Buy, McDonald's, they probably already know those things exist. But when you get into the smaller businesses that rely a little bit more on discovery, it's super important to have a well-established Google My Business listing and page set up. So that you can be discovered, so that potentially you can outrank some of the bigger businesses for more generic terms, should your business listing be sufficiently well optimized. That's the way that I'd approach that. Jérôme, any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with you. The thing is, it depends on the size of your local stores, your local how do you say, yeah, the number of points you have, the number of addresses, because even if it's a big business but you don't have many stores, Google My Business might not be as important as a small business with more shops. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I mean, the size of your implementation is also important.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's good. I hope we answered the question. Let us know if there's any follow-up. The next question is from George. Would you recommend using the COVID type post since it pushes every other post type off the knowledge panel? I guess, George, it's really going to be case by case. I know it's not the it's not necessarily the answer you were hoping for, is it depends answer, but ultimately we are talking about SEO here. So I mean, it depends on how reliant you are on your on your more traditional post types to convey information to your users, and how well, let's say, you can look at the engagement of those posts to see how much you're sacrificing if you choose to put a COVID post type up in its place. Ultimately, I think that if there is some confusion taking place with respect to how users are perceiving your business, whether it's open, whether your services are available, I do think that that's a good opportunity to, and when it pushes your traditional post types off the knowledge panel, it doesn't replace them in the same place. COVID posts actually appear a little higher up, so they have that increased visibility as well. So so there's a few things to consider there. I think it's going to change case by case. How important are those regular post types for you? Is there a sufficient degree of confusion amongst your clientele on whether or not you're open? That's going to play a big role in determining whether or not that makes sense for your specific case.
Yeah,
Another question from Loic. Paying to get a certification is not a guarantee of quality, right? As anyone can buy it. So this hasn't been launched to everyone yet. It's a slow rollout, so it's not. I'm not actually 100% sure on what the exact guarantee is. I'm skeptical of the just buy it. I don't think that's the way that it was positioned. I do think that there's a little bit more to it. There is a process by which you need to go through a certification, but honestly, I'd have to look more into it to really know 100% and be confident in a response that I give to you on that.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I think there is a validation process that is guaranteeing that of the quality of your GMB profile and the information you're giving. So maybe they verify it manually.
Yeah, that one. Okay, so we do see your email that you used to sign up for the webinar. So we'll put a pin in that question and make sure to reach out to you to see if we can provide some additional clarity. Another question from George: will Google guaranteed listings be surfaced ahead of listings with? Listings. I lost it as a new question came in. Will Google guaranteed listings be surfaced ahead of listings without one? How will this impact ranking in the local pack in light of LSAs? Yeah, it's too early to tell whether or not this is being used as a ranking factor, but I think that Google would get in a whole host of trouble if they started manipulating the organic results based on how much you pay. I can't see that going over very well. I want to give them a benefit of the doubt and assume that this is not going to be used as a ranking factor, but rather the existing order of search results will remain. It's just that certain ones who choose to opt for the guaranteed badge will have that nice little green check mark, which may influence CTRs away from the first position where they usually would reside.
I hope so as well.
Yeah. Question from Rebecca: what would you advise local businesses to prioritize first if they're just getting online in 2020? I don't hesitate very much at all to recommend that you dig deep into Google My Business and set up a very robust listing for yourself, because that's ultimately, I think, the place that you're going to be discovered most, especially if you're a local business for local type searches. Get your Google My Business listing up with a good description, with a good set of attributes and available services or products, whatever it happens to be that you do. Also, reviews are such a huge factor right now for influencing engagement with your local listing result. So if you can, getting into a great area here, but sorry, go ahead.
You also need a page on your website that reflects the same information on your GMB profile. It's also important that you link this page on your GMB, and that the opening hours, the address, any services are the same on both pages. So it's also an important factor of ranking.
Yeah, local-based content on your site. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just gonna mirror your sentiments there. If you want to add something else, by all means.
No, thanks.
So I hope that answered your question. Julie, with regards to page experience, what are some of the on-site modifications that can make the biggest difference? That's always a really tough question to answer, because we're back into the it depends territory here. Everybody's site is so different. Everybody's CMS operates differently, whatever theme they happen to be using within similar CMSs. So the optimization opportunities available to any given webmaster often it's hard to pin down. So the conversation is best had with your webmaster, with your developer, or if you don't have a developer, whatever resource you've relied upon to build your website, as no one knows it better than they do. Some common stuff, I mean, you've probably heard this already, it might not be a mind-bending recommendation, but optimizing images is one of the easiest things you can do. Images are one of the heaviest resources that need to be loaded on request. So if you can compress those images to make them smaller file sizes to speed up the load time. That's a huge gain. I know that for certain CMSs, there's intelligent plugins that'll also look through your site and see if there's opportunities to compress some resources, potentially implement something like lazy loading, where only the content that's visible on the rate on the resolution of your screen is loaded in at any given time, and things load procedurally as users start to scroll down. That's also an interesting opportunity, but ultimately I think the takeaway here is to have a conversation with your developers, look through tools like Page Speed Insights that do a great job of scanning your page and coming up with some of the biggest hiccups that it found when trying to load the content, and see and address those optimization opportunities with your dev to see if they're feasible.
Yeah, and it might seem seems obvious, but the key is to get everyone working together on that question. Not only the SEO, but you need the developers, you need an UX designer if you have one, the web designers, and work together on this problematic, but because it's not only about SEO, page experience, it's about your website UX. So it will affect also your conversion and not your business, your online business, not only SEO. So yeah, you need everyone working together on that topic.
That's a good point. Cameron asks, how do you determine which errors are false positives? I guess I would need to get a little bit more specificity for that question. Which errors are you talking about? What report are you referring to? If you want to keep that conversation going, please let us know. Yeah. Unless you have any thoughts about that question, maybe I'm just not interpreting it well enough.
No.
Question from,
yeah.
Sorry. Question from Nick
as well. So sorry.
Any tips on any tips on getting buy-in from the wider team to help with the implementation of core web vital fixes? Dev and UX resource is low, and SEO isn't always their priority. Yeah, that's definitely a tough one. I mean, as these things roll out, I mean, like best case scenario is that you'd be proactive about addressing core web vital stuff so that when they roll out in May 2021, you're not hit with like, let's say your core web vitals aren't in good shape right now. May 2021 comes around and they become official ranking factors, depending on their degree of significance towards the overall algorithm. You could see a significant drop in your traffic at that time. So, I mean, at that time, it would be much easier to quantify, okay, so yesterday they weren't a ranking factor and today they are, and yesterday we had this traffic and today we have this traffic, and then you can put a monetary value on that decrease in traffic and bring dollars and cents to the table, to the discussion, where previously it was theory, and that usually turns some heads. So you can unfortunately, that requires taking a less proactive approach, and your bottom line will be impacted. But also, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but as I said, it's not only about SEO. It will also affect SEA, and SEA is about a lot of money as well if you're spending money on it. And having a faster or better page experience will make some direct impact on your revenue. So if SEO is not a priority, maybe SEA is, or maybe other acquisition channel are. So yeah, you can use that argument.
Yeah, and on your note of SEA, we've had I've seen issues in the past where your ad will be declined because the page experience doesn't meet Google's criteria. And digging into that a little bit, it turns out that the page speed just wasn't quite up to par. And so if you're experiencing issues with your PPC campaigns as a result of something like that, you could make this argument that attacking these core web vital optimization opportunities is sort of like a two birds, one stone. Question from Fabio. In reference to the page speed update rolling out in May 2021, in some markets I see the main players showing really poor page speed score on Google Page Speed Insights. If no one of those sites are going to improve their page speed, what do you think is going to happen on the SERP? Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so the way that I'd tackle that is, for one thing, it's good that you have this in this perspective of not taking page speed insights scores in a vacuum, sort of taking them to heart, or maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but drawing too many conclusions from the score that's presented to you on page speed insights in a vacuum. Ultimately, the page speed insight score, I don't know if you've ever scrolled through it, but Google is extremely picky on that tool. It's very much like a best case scenario. Don't ever try to get to the score of 100 on page speed insights, because it's not going to happen. There's always something that needs to be fixed, and more often than not, Google is a little bit trigger happy to flag certain optimization shortcomings that are present on your site. So it really is more interesting when you start to look at your page speed insight score versus that of your competitors, and not just like your typical competitors who you feel your competitors are offline, but really from a keyword ranking SERP, search engine result page, by search engine result page, based on whatever keyword was inputted, who your competitors are in that on that first page, positions 1 through 10, how are their page speed insights scores? And if it so happens to be the case that everyone who's ranking well is all in the 10 to 30 range of page speed insights scores, which I've seen more often than not, then page speed doesn't seem like it's the decision, the basis of the decision from Google anymore. It looks like that Google is looking at a landscape where everyone's roughly equivalently bad in terms of page speed. So let's look at another signal to try to decide who should rank over who. So if May 2021 comes around and no one you're competing with for search results decides to improve their core web vitals, two things will happen. Either Google will look to other signals to decide who should rank over who, whether it's authority, whether it's the quality of your content, or relevance or optimization for the target keyword, or new players will start to surface, people that once ranked on page 2 or 3 or 4 or beyond, who maybe their page speed was the thing that was holding them back the most, but now they're starting to invest in core web vitals, so now they don't really have they don't really have that obvious shortcoming anymore, and that qualifies them to rank better and better for keywords for which you never really considered them a competitor on.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Thanks you everyone for reaching this webinar, and thank you Jay for animating with me. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. My pleasure. Thanks so much for attending, everyone. Thanks to our organizers.
Yes.
We have Chloe and MJ, and I know Tanguy is here as well. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I looked at Julie is here, and did I forget anyone?
Yeah.
We
had wonderful support from Bloom and OnCrawl. So Thanks everyone.
Thanks for your time. Have a good, what day is it? Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right.
Bye-bye.